Hi, my name is Brusan, and I'm the head of developer relations at Partisia Blockchain Foundation. Today, we're here to do two things. Number one, I'd like to introduce Tiago, who is our new head of community. I can't tell you how excited I am to have him on board. He's joining us with a tremendous amount of credentials, worked in multiple different blockchains in the past, has very unique background, which we'll go into a little bit on the call today. And really is a special guy. I'm really excited for him to take our community to new levels. The other thing that we want to showcase today is the secure and private voting that we demonstrated at the Paris Blockchain Week, where we powered the Paris Blockchain Week Awards and allowed the blend of privacy and transparency in a voting system using multi-party computation. So we'll dig a little bit deeper into how that technology works and how that can be used in multiple different voting settings. So why don't we begin? Why don't we begin first with Tiago? So Tiago, just a couple of questions just to get us started here. When did you begin getting interested in the blockchain space, and how did you begin?
Well, first of all, thank you, Bruce, for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be part of Partisia and such a fine group of gentlemen and gentlewomen as well. It's going to be a great project to watch grow in the future. So when did I get started in the blockchain industry? Wow. So that was around 2012 when I started really understanding what Bitcoin was all about. But it was in 2013 that I actually started mining. So I'm not a developer, but I've always been hooked up to computers since I was a kid. And when I discovered mining, I was, oh my God, this is so interesting. So I started mining. I bought a secondhand ASIC here in the local market just to get started. And then I bought a 6-rig GPU. And then, yeah, that led me into the rabbit hole. I started participating actively in a couple of projects as a community member. And this was leading into 2014, the first major crypto winter that I experienced. So I got involved with a project called Darkcoin. So at the time, by market cap, it was Bitcoin, then Litecoin, then something like Peercoin or something like that. And I was looking for the next great project that had a unique unique selling proposition. So Darkcoin was one of the first two privacy coins, which later rebranded to Dash, and it was it was a grand experiment of a self-organizing community around one developer that I contributed to grow to top 5 market cap in 2017. So that's how I got onboarded onto the industry.
Yeah, it's just definitely interesting. Like you mentioned that you do not have any development experience, but it sounds like you actually have technical experience as well, right? So you actually bought your own rig, you had a mining a rig to get started. You're one of the OGs, if I could kind of put it, right? Which is really exciting to have. Um, I also understand that while you don't have any development experience, you actually have a very interesting background and from an education and other experience perspective, like from what I understand, you actually have done some audio engineering, right, in the music industry. And you also have a degree in clinical neuropsychology,
That is
right?
correct. That's correct.
Which is very unusual in the blockchain space. You don't really hear about somebody who actually has these kinds of very diverse and also very unique both experience and education. And I'm wondering, like, how did those two fields helped you in managing communities in the blockchain space?
That's an interesting question. So before the blockchain industry, I worked 15 years in the music industry. So as a musician myself, self-taught, that got sucked into the professional medium here in Portugal as a musician, and I decided to pursue a degree in audio engineering, so that since I don't have a musical education, at least the technical knowledge about recording, microphones, mixing, mastering, doing live music. That's how I got into audio engineering, and I ended up working 15 years in the local market and international market as well. I have some very interesting names under my belt. But this was while I was pursuing psychology and clinical psychology as a master's degree, which I thought was like, okay, I needed a real job, a real profession. Well, in the end, it happened that when I was finishing my internship, that's when I discovered Bitcoin and started mining. And I soon realized that I did not have the calling to wear a white coat and be a clinician. So I transitioned into the blockchain industry, and I realized that these two skill sets were actually quite useful. I usually joke saying that being a community manager is somewhat like being a psychologist for a global client, a global community, because people have emotions, people have problems, people need help, they need guidance. That is what community management is about. It's about helping people achieve their goals and their success. For example, research has shown that people tend to be much more impulsive when they are behind an anonymous avatar or a nickname, and that leads very easily to what is called cyberbullying in some cases, or in our industry, it's called trolling. So understanding the motivations behind these behaviors is instrumental to create strategies to how to avoid them in the future and create a positive environment where people thrive as a community. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's it. Many principles of psychology do apply to community management. Assertiveness is like the core skill that any community manager must have, and this is taught in psychology. How to become a clinician, you need to be assertive, maintain that tone of voice, maintain that posture, constantly not let negative sentiments and stuff like that get to you personally.
Yeah, so in any kind of a community, and I certainly am not an old school blockchain or crypto expert like some of you guys, but the community sometimes can just go in like one from one direction to another, and I suspect that having that expertise really helps in building a positive environment for all of the community members. So.
Absolutely. And just to finish up on that topic, community building is a marathon. It's not a race. It's just like having a family. You start as a toddler, you start growing, you start crawling, then you start walking, then you start running. So it's very exciting to be part of a young community as Partisia and doing my little part to see it grow.
I'm really excited to have you here for that specific aspect, especially, right? So I also understand that you've worked with a fairly a long list of blockchain companies. One of the largest, being Cardano in the past. As you know, Partisia blockchain is a relatively new blockchain, right? How did you hear about us? How did you find us and got interested in us?
Right. So I've been 10 years in this industry, 3 or 4 major crypto winters that I used to hate. Now I love, because that's when you separate the chaff from the wheat from the chaff. And that's when you actually see what quality projects survive, what quality teams are out there doing good project management that is able to resist the downfalls of the market. But anyway, I am a degenerate myself. And I'm proud of it. I don't do NFTs all that much. I have a couple of NFT projects that I do believe in, but mostly it's the utility that a blockchain project has to fix real world problems. So last year, I found out about Partisia, among other projects that we're launching. I did my due diligence, and when I need to read, even though I'm not a developer, I am very technical, very geek in nature. I've read a million white papers. And when I need to read a white paper 2 or 3 or 4 times to start wrapping my head around the concepts, and I look at the team, and these are known professionals in the fields of cryptography, distributed systems, microeconomy, all that, you're in for something special. When you need to read that white paper a couple of times, you realize that this is next generation stuff. And privacy is very near and dear to me. So anything related to privacy and understanding what MPC is, multi-party computation, I quickly realized, oh my God, this is generation 4 blockchain. I need to get on this. So I myself am an investor. I did participate in the token sale last year. Had no idea that I'd be working for the project many months later. But yeah, that's what I did. I just did my own due diligence. I on the team, on the project, on the technical side, if it was really solving anything or just another blockchain tackling the same thing that a dozen other blockchains are trying to tackle. And yeah, that's what got me excited about Partisia. So then out of pure coincidence, I decided to part ways with the project that I was previously working at. And when I started notifying my professional network, hey, what are you guys up to? I'm ready for a new opportunity, or do you know of anything that's happening out there? Yeah, I got invited by the Partisia team to come meet them in Lisbon in January. And some of the people that are part of Partisia now used to be at Cardano Foundation, where we met, so we know each other quite well. And it was a no-brainer. I met the team, we talked about the strategy, the vision, what we're trying to achieve, and we've quickly found out that we were aligned in vision for what a community should look like, the plans to make it grow. So yeah, that's what, it was a no-brainer. And yeah, I'm happy to be here now.
Yeah, I'm definitely glad to hear that you were actually a fan of Partisia even before you joined, because in my perspective, we're really lucky to have you to have that kind of experience, not just from a blockchain industry perspective, right, but just from a education, the background perspective as well, because I think it really lends, like you mentioned, it really lends itself back to how to manage a community, very effectively. So, really excited to have you. And really looking forward to working with you continuously. So
thank you very much,
welcome
Bruce.
aboard.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we met in Lisbon, and just to top
We
off
did.
that and move on to the core subject of this session today. Yeah, being a fan of the project is makes a world of difference. When you wake up and get out of bed every morning, you wake up with a sense of a mission. You're working to achieve something that is much bigger than yourself, and the sum of all parts is much bigger. So the team is fantastic. I really feel at home, even though it's been very short time. We met in Lisbon. I was in the Paris Blockchain Week last week, so meeting the team in real life is absolutely game changing than just remote working and just meeting through Google Meet and stuff like that. So I'm absolutely sure that we are here to conquer the world. So anyway, to the community, thank you very much for the opportunity to introduce myself, but I will be doing a dedicated community AMA kind of fireside chat so that everyone can come in and talk to me directly, ask me questions, and get to know me better. But for today, yeah, let's move on, Bruce. I have a couple of questions to you regarding one of the use cases of Partisia blockchain that we demoed last week at the Paris Blockchain Week. So for those out there who might be new to Partisia blockchain, and they keep hearing about voting. Please understand that Partisia blockchain is not just a one-trick pony where voting is our core mission, private voting, but it is one of the features that has the most impact in the world where it is needed. So what is the challenge, Bruce, with voting that we are facing nowadays?
Yeah, and I think you can see this in many different countries actually. And I'm originally from the U.S. And so in the U.S. There's a lot of what I'll call the polarization between political parties. And if you've read or heard the news, the last 10 years or so, right? It's been just nonstop back and forth, especially with Trump these days. And regardless of where you are in the political spectrum, I don't think anyone can argue the fact that there's a lot of divisiveness these days. So multi-party computation is really geared towards being able to bring together participants or entities that are mutually distrustful or not trustful in nature, right? And kind of bring them together and allow them to work together and collaborate together, right? And the word, distrustful or mutually mistrustful is really more of a technical word, right? So it's a technical jargon that you want to use in this context where, even Tiago, you and I could be considered as mutually distrustful as well, right? So when we begin to have conversations about, hey, who did you vote for? Or who did I vote for? Right? There's hesitancy in disclosing that information, right? And so that can be also defined as mutually distrustful. And that's what Partisia blockchain and multi-party computation really does. And so when we take the use case of voting or election, and this could be in any level, it could be, high school class president voting, or it could be stockholder voting for a particular proposal, or we could talk about government voting. There's always a group, a mass of people that basically say, hey, we want transparency. We want to verify 100% that this is accurate, that nobody tampered with this. And we want to ensure that every single vote is counted, that there is no issues with the election, with the tools that were used. And we want to make sure that it's accurate, right? And that's what the mass, the group of people are saying. And then when you take a look at it from an individual perspective, right? And then you start asking them, hey, listen, we can do this, but in order for you to do it, you need to disclose who you voted for. Then people are like, wait a second here. I'm not comfortable in disclosing this information, right? So now you have a conundrum. You have a catch-22 situation. How can you truly have a transparent election that has integrity without revealing the private information that's around a person's, who they voted for, right? So now you have this catch-22 situation. And so multi-party computation really is a way for you to be able to balance that, because it allows you to be able to compute on the data without needing to reveal the underlying secret input, in this case, a particular vote that you made around it. So imagine, like, you don't have to tell the world exactly what you voted for, but still be able to compute on the actual data itself, right? And that's what multi-party computation really does.
Okay. So Bruce, you kind of touched a bit on the follow-up question that I had for that, but can we dig deeper into why you think it is important to solve this challenge and how MPC technology can contribute to that?
Yeah, it's important to solve it because, well, I think it's self-evident that it is important to solve it, right? So having a verifiably accurate and election that has integrity is the core principle of the democratic process, right? If there are corruptions or if there are irregularities in the election, then it defeats the principle of what many countries are founded on. And so, to me, it's a very self-evident kind of a thing. Without it, the core principles of democracy begins to crumble. And I'm not sure how better a way to describe that. It is such an important and critical function of the democratic process itself.
Last week, we were at the Paris Blockchain Week. What did we do there that was so unique that will tie in with what you just explained?
Yeah, so maybe this will be a good time to kind of go over a couple of slides that we created, and let me see if I can bring those up, because it will demonstrate exactly what it is that we did in Paris Blockchain Week.
Okay.
So Partisia participated, or we were the technology that powered the Paris Blockchain Week Awards. And what we demonstrated there was the ability for us to uh, privatize or hide the actual vote of the voters, but still be able to compute mathematically through encryption that the voting result was accurate, right? And so the question is, like, how does that even work? How does that actually happen? And so we'll just quickly review what the traditional blockchain voting really works as, and how multi-party computation adds that layer of privacy that really completes the the picture of being able to both have transparency as well as privacy and balance those two in a voting process, right? And so in a traditional smart contract blockchain voting, it's pretty simple, right? You have a smart contract out there where people are able to vote on a candidate, and you could add like things like KYC information in there if you really wanted to ensure that you're counting those individual votes, right? So we have a list of voters. We have, let's say, Bob, Alice, and Terry. They're voting on two candidates, right? Candidate one and candidate two. And, in a traditional blockchain voting, everything is transparent. You have all of the candidates listed and the people that have voted for those candidates, and is recorded in the blockchain. And what you can do with what's called a unified public and private smart contract blockchain voting, what you can do is actually privatize and obfuscate the actual vote information of the voters, who they voted for, right? And so we from Partisia Blockchain's perspective, we call it the unified public and private smart contract, which basically means that you have a public side of things where the public side, you can see some certain public information that is transparent to the entire blockchain. And then you also have a private side of things, which has private information, and both of them can coexist and interact with each other, right? And so in this event, what you can have is the things like the voter information, which in our situation, we actually whitelisted, right? So we actually had a list of people that we've whitelisted to ensure that they are the only ones who are capable of voting for this particular zero knowledge or multi-party computation voting structure that we created. And so we had that list in KYC, and you could see exactly who is part of that list and who is able to vote, right? That's the transparent part. And then when they selected to vote, that vote information was hidden and it was privatized. Nobody can see it. Not even Partisia Blockchain can see it. It is decentralized. So nobody can see who each of these individuals voted. But still, the blockchain was able to compute the actual winner and compute who the basic winner was, right? And so again, it balances the transparency and the privacy part of it, while still being able to compute, who the result was. But how is that possible, right? And so the way it basically works is it's the process of removing context of the data that you want to keep private, right? And so removing the context through splitting of the data basically means is, so as an example, right, my name is Bruce An, and I live in New York, in the US, et cetera, et cetera. Let's say that's the information, right? That information has context. It has where I live. It has my first name and last name, right? There's context to that, and through context, people can figure out who I am. But if we break down those individual pieces of the data, there's no way you could know who I am, because just by knowing my first name, Bruce, you're not going to be able to identify who I am. Just by having my last name An, you're not going to know who I am either. Just like having just New York, it's not going to identify who I am, right? And so every data has context, and you need context in order for you to identify what that data really is for. But if we split the data up you remove that context. And that's basically the starting point of multi-party computation. And so in the voting example, what we've done is we've vectorized candidate one. And now in the smart contract system, candidate one means 0. And then the Bob who's voted for candidate one, who has now vectorized it to 0, keeps that information to himself. But then he creates 4 additional numbers, random numbers. Well, it's not really random, and I'll go into that a little bit, but these seem random to the nodes that are going to receive it. So there's 4 numbers that gets created, right? And it's associated with that vectorized number. And these random numbers that now have no context to what Bob voted, each of those small pieces gets sent to each individual nodes in the blockchain. So node 1 gets the number 1. Node 2 gets the number 2. Node 3 gets the number 3. Node 4 gets the number 4. So now each of these 4 nodes have one piece of the data in the same way as if my name was broken down into different pieces, right? If node 1 only had the name Bruce, they would not be able to identify who I am. All right, so it's a similar concept of removing context through splitting of the data. So that's the first piece. We've removed the context of who you voted for. Then, in the case of the actual figuring out how to compute for this particular type of a multi-party computation, we're going to use what's called Shamir's secret sharing, right? And what that is just basically is that we're going to create a line, right? So Bob voted for candidate 0, but he's not going to share that he voted for candidate 0. So he gave these 4 numbers. And those 4 numbers are really derived by him drawing a line. It doesn't matter where in the graph, right? So Bob's vector was 0, as you can see here, right? Bob's vector was 0. And he created a number 1, 2, 3, 4 as a result, right? And these 1, 2, 3, 4 is basically a line that goes straight through the vector, which was 0. So you can see on this graph, 1, 2, 3, 4. Alice voted for 1. Alice's vector is here, and she drew a line. And it could be any line. It could have gone through here, it could have gone through here, it could have gone through anywhere in the graph. She just drew a random line, chose 4 numbers from that line, and then she shared those numbers to the various different nodes, right? So this is Alice's line. And then Terry voted for candidate 0. And the 0, she chose 2, 4, 6, 8. That was the line that she chose. And you could see in the vectors, this line was drawn, right? And so in this way, the data has been split up. The context has been lost as to who the candidate voted for. Each of the nodes have one piece of the data, but that's all they know. And so none of the nodes actually know who each of these voters voted for. All they know is that they just have a number. That's all they know, right? But these numbers is associated with a particular line that they drew in the graph, right? And then what multi-party computation does is it sums up the y coordinates of the line, right? So node 1 knows the y coordinates as, let's see, what is the node 1's y coordinate? Node 1's y coordinate is 1, 2, 2, right? Because for Bob's vote, it was 1. And for Alice's vote and Terry's vote, it was 2, right? And we sum it up, and then we get the value of 5. And we do this, each of the nodes basically do the same thing. And then we get a single line that goes across that ends up in 1, right? And that 1 designates the number of votes that candidate 1 received. So knowing that candidate 1 received 1 vote, you can surmise that candidate 0 received 2 votes. And as a result, we know that candidate 0 was the winner and not candidate 1. And so this kind of breaks down mathematically in a very simple way, in a very simple example. If we had more voters and if we had more candidates, the math would be a lot more complex. But this is a very simple example of how a math equation can be used using data that has been split up, that has lost context, and is still able to compute what the winner was. Right. So now, as a result of this math computation and the help of the different nodes that are out there that has no idea about what each of these voters voted for, we still can figure out mathematically and proven mathematically that it was actually candidate 0 that won the election by a vote of 2-1. And so that's the overview of what we did in the Paris Blockchain Week. And I would also invite anyone to jump in to our website at partisiablockchain.com to learn more information. Certainly, please reach out to me as well, or to you, Tiago, right? To get more information, and we'd be happy to help in building out solutions for your system. If you have a particular need for secure voting or for any other use cases that Partisia blockchain can help with.
Bruce, just one final question, and thank you for this presentation. I hope everyone starts to understand the complexities and how magical MPC is. But for the user, the end user, which this presentation could have been a bit overwhelming, does this mean that as someone who is going to cast their vote, do I need to understand anything of this? Is it going to be a different voting system? Because you just explained the underlying mechanics, but for the typical voter who just wants to vote on any given election, how different would that experience look like?
Yeah, I think from a voter experience, it really wouldn't look that much different. From a actual voting process itself, right? From a voting process itself, it'll be the same thing as, hey, I chose candidate 0 or candidate 1. What I will add, though, is that the data that you actually voted for does not leave and it stays with you. That is the main difference. So what you're basically doing is you're not sharing and disclosing who you voted for, but rather you're actually keeping that private. And that's yours. And so you're the owner of that data. And you're just lending the use of that data one time for the voting auction to occur. And so it's a really fundamental difference from a data ownership perspective. But from a process perspective, from somebody actually doing the voting themselves, nothing should change. Everything is basically the same from that perspective.
All right. Thank you very much, Bruce. I think that concludes our session for today. We will have more sessions in the future to explain the use cases of Partisia blockchain and the use cases for MPC. Any final words, Bruce?
Yeah, super excited again to have you on board. Excited to work together and also to see additional growth in our community, right? And so, so really looking forward to working with you.
Thank you very much, Bruce. Likewise. And stay tuned. More of these are to come. And soon enough, I'll announce when I'll have the AMA so the community can come and meet me personally and ask all the questions that they might have. In the meantime, stay tuned for our announcements. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.